Rage, fear, and hidden power collide when a biased officer crosses the line, attacking a black pregnant woman in broad daylight. But the next day, the town is stunned as the officer's life unravels, forcing him to face consequences he never anticipated. What he didn't know was that her husband was no ordinary man. This is a tale of justice, secrets, and a family's unbreakable bond. It was a bright, sunny morning in Morganville, a small town in North Carolina. The sky was clear, and a gentle breeze rustled through the trees lining the streets. Marissa stepped out of her beautiful white brick house, her face glowing with a warm smile. She was a kind, caring, and well-loved woman, known for her kindness and contributions to the community. At 6 months pregnant, her belly was round and heavy, yet she carried herself with grace. Her husband, Aaron, had been away on a business trip for days, and she planned to surprise him with his favorite dinner when he returned that evening. As she walked down the sidewalk toward the store, she hummed softly, one hand resting on her belly, the other holding a small list. "You're going to love what I'm making for your daddy," she whispered to her unborn child, gently rubbing her belly as she felt a soft kick in response. Marissa chuckled, her eyes twinkling with joy. These short walks were a cherished routine. They gave her the exercise she needed, a chance to enjoy the fresh air, and an opportunity to greet her neighbors. People in the community knew her well, often waving or exchanging a kind word as she passed. She moved at a slow, steady pace, feeling a sense of happiness and purpose with each step. Everything felt peaceful, and she was content. As she neared the corner, her mind drifted to the meal she was planning. She imagined Aaron's smile as he walked through the door, weary from his trip but delighted to see the dinner she had prepared. Her heart warmed at the thought of seeing him again. Suddenly, the peace of the morning shattered. A loud screech pierced the quiet as a police car abruptly pulled to the curb, its tires grinding against the pavement. Startled, Marissa turned to see the car window rolling down, revealing Officer Bennett. He was new to town but had quickly gained a reputation for being rude and unnecessarily aggressive. With a cold, stern look, he stared at Marissa, his eyes narrowing with an intensity that felt hostile. "Stop right there!" Bennett barked, his tone sharp and commanding. Marissa froze, confusion washing over her. "Excuse me?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. "Is there a problem, officer?" Bennett ignored her question, stepping out of the car and closing the door behind him. "I need to see your ID," he demanded, walking toward her with an intimidating authority that felt more oppressive than official. Marissa hesitated, a flicker of fear sparking within her. "I'm just going to the store," she replied, trying to keep her voice calm. "Why do you need to see my ID?" His expression grew more hostile. "Because I said so," he snapped, his voice tense. "You're acting suspicious, and I want to know what you're doing out here." A chill ran down her spine. She knew she had done nothing wrong, but his demeanor made her feel guilty. Her heart pounded as she tried to stay calm. "I'm not doing anything wrong," she said softly. "Just heading to the store to pick up some things." "Just show me your ID," Bennett shouted, cutting her off. Her hands trembling, Marissa quickly pulled her ID from her purse, hoping to defuse the situation. She could feel a few people watching, the tension around her thick and heavy. Snatching her ID, Bennett glanced at it before shoving it back into her hand. "What are you really doing out here?" he demanded, his tone dripping with suspicion. Marissa's frustration began to override her fear. "I told you," she repeated, her voice wavering. "I'm going to the store. Can I go now?" But Bennett wasn't done. He stepped closer, his face inches from hers. "You think you can talk back to me?" he sneered. "You're acting like you have something to hide." Her heart raced, and she raised her hands slightly, trying to de-escalate the situation. But suddenly, Bennett raised his voice even louder, shouting accusations. "Stop resisting!" he yelled, drawing more onlookers. Marissa's mind reeled, confusion mixing with panic. She hadn't done anything wrong. She stepped back, hands still raised, but Bennett's aggression only seemed to escalate. Without warning, he lunged forward and pushed her. Marissa stumbled, her belly making it difficult to keep her balance. "Please stop," she cried, but her words only seemed to anger him more. In a horrifying instant, Bennett kicked her in the stomach. The impact knocked her to the ground, and she cried out in pain, clutching her belly as tears streamed down her face. "My baby," she gasped, her voice breaking. The world seemed to stop for a moment, silence hanging in the air before the chaos erupted. Onlookers rushed toward her, horrified by what they had just witnessed. "Call an ambulance," someone shouted as others tried to help Marissa, lying on the ground in agony, her hands protectively cradling her belly as she whispered, "Please, my baby, please be okay," over and over, a mantra of desperation. Officer Bennett stood back, expressionless, as the ambulance sirens grew louder. A woman nearby whispered, "How could he do this?" At the hospital, the atmosphere was tense as doctors and nurses rushed Marissa into the emergency room. She fought through the haze of pain, her mind clouded with fear. The doctors worked frantically, preparing her for an emergency C-section. "Please, let my baby be okay," she whispered, as a nurse squeezed her hand in reassurance. Meanwhile, Aaron was still on his business trip when he received a call from Marissa's best friend, Ava. Her voice was frantic. "Aaron, get to the hospital. Marissa, she's hurt." Aaron felt his world collapse. He left the meeting without hesitation, rushing to the airport, heart pounding with dread. Aaron had lived a life few knew about. Behind his calm exterior was a man trained in counterintelligence, someone who could think on his feet and handle high-pressure situations. But today, he was helpless. This wasn't a mission. This was his family. Bennett stumbled back, fear gripping him. His day spiraled into paranoia. When he tried to start his car, it refused to turn on. His phone kept glitching. An unmarked car passed his house several times, a silent threat. At work, his colleagues whispered, avoiding his gaze. Panic clawed at him, and as he arrived home that night, he found another envelope. This time, there was a video showing his living room from a hidden camera angle. A note lay on his coffee table. "You messed with the wrong family. Make things right, or the world will know everything." As the video feed cut out, Aaron sat back, calm and collected. He had given Bennett a warning. Now, it was up to him. The next day, Bennett announced his resignation at a press conference. He stood before the cameras, pale and shaking, his voice barely steady. "I deeply regret my actions," he stammered, eyes downcast. "I apologize to Marissa Clark and her family." Marissa, watching from the sidelines, felt tears well up. Relief washed over her, mingled with a confusion that she couldn't quite place. Aaron held her hand tightly, his calm reassuring. Later, as they returned home, Marissa looked at him. "How did this happen?" she asked softly. "I thought they were going to protect him." "Sometimes people just need to see the consequences of their actions," Aaron replied, his tone gentle, but his eyes revealing something deeper. Marissa studied him, sensing that there was more to Aaron than she knew. "Your job, it's not what I thought, is it?" Aaron smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "My job is to protect our family," he said softly. "That's all you need to know." Later that evening, after Marissa had gone to rest, Aaron sat alone, pulling out a small metal box filled with artifacts of his hidden past, documents and passports under different names. In that quiet moment, he made a silent promise. No one would ever hurt his family again.